What is up, guys, and I do hope you're well. Today we're back with some r/Prorevenge. And don't forget, guys, we're giving away some of those daddy cringe mugs. All you have to do to be involved is be subscribed to this channel. And that's it. And with that being said, let's get straight into the stories. Much love, guys. The first story is from Chablis3. Roommate didn't know what respect was. It's long, so TLDR is at the bottom. Brief backstory: I grew up in a small Tennessee college town. Ended up leaving for 4 years for high school, came back for college. During middle and elementary school, I had a close friend who we'll call Bree. Bree was a very bright young girl. Good supportive family, had her future pretty set up. I ended up falling out of contact quickly when I left the town. Yet when I came back the summer before college to look for a place, I was staying with an extended family who lived too far from the college to commute. We had bumped into each other at a fast food chain. Turns out her parents had divorced and she went through a I hate my parents phase. Her parents were probably some of the nicest people I knew, to be honest. That was still evidently going on. Since she confided in me, she was trying to move out. What a coincidence. We get back in contact, agreed to house hunt together. She seemed the same, honestly, if not a little more opinionated. We eventually settled for an apartment, good neighbourhood, close by for me. I managed to snag a job while her parents were sending her money for rent and whatnot. I had plenty in my savings from working my arse off the second I turned 16 and had a few good scholarships, so money wasn't a horrible worry for me. We signed the lease, everything is grand. Until the weekend. School didn't start for another 2 weeks, so it's not like I really needed the beauty sleep. However, it's still incredibly annoying to wake up to finding your living room filled with random people and the very heavy scent of weed in the air. In case you don't know, weed is illegal in Tennessee. I shrug it off. I'm not about to tell her how to live her life. She'd probably just thrown a housewarming party with some of her newer friends. I'm not exactly the most social person, so when I went out, because I couldn't fall back asleep, I just sat on the couch looking blankly at the TV. The thing is, I have very good ears. Listen to the random conversation around me. I gathered many of these people were very into doing illegal actions. A little of it centered around weed. There were 3 different kids with backpacks, which I would later learn were dealers. It was a weed fest. I'm not personally against weed. I've tried it a few times and it didn't really float my boat. Live and let live is my motto. The night went as a normal party. A few beers, a shitload of blunts, the usual. I didn't partake and ended up going back to bed as soon as the noise died down enough. The week went by normally. Had a brief conversation with Bree about the spontaneous party. Oh, I just want to show my friends my new place. Yeah, right. The next weekend, same deal. Tons of people, tons of music, tons of weed. Now, I'm a little annoyed, but no trouble had come our way, so I wasn't going to throw a hissy fit. The trouble came the morning after. I went to go grab some snacks and stopped by a guy. Hey, do you live in that apartment? He pointed to my apartment. Yes, I confirmed. Could you perhaps dial down the weed smell on the weekends? I mean, I get it. I smoke too, but the smell keeps travelling through the vents to my baby's room, he requested. Of course, I'll talk to my roommate. To make a long, annoying talk with her short, she didn't give a crap. The next weekend, she was smoking again. I spent the entire night in front of the vent in the living room spraying it down with Febreze and some scentless spray a dealer gave me when he saw what I was doing. It didn't help. Sunday, he was at our front door, explaining to both myself and Bree that if we didn't dial it back, his wife would be calling the cops. She did, the next weekend. There were usually 20 to 30 people in the area for her parties. They weren't huge, but I've still never seen that many people duck behind furniture and dive into rooms, as they did when the now all too familiar cop knock hit the door. Seriously, it took them half a second to scatter, and surprisingly quietly too. So, there was a cop at my door for a party I wasn't even involved in. What the hell? They ended up being pretty chill, saying, "We get it, just dial it down," and leaving. But that was just the beginning. They came 2 more times, each with the same response, but on the 3rd visit they ended up scanning our IDs. I do not need this shit on my record. They easily had probable cause. The attendees left at least 1 piece out in the open, like idiots. I usually put up with a lot before I snap, and after countless pleading with Bree, she still refused to stop the partying. I decided I had to make them leave. The next party, the cops would no doubt surface. I managed to drag Bree out of the house to the grocery store, claiming I'd buy her snacks. Leaving her to choose, I left to the bathroom and made a rather nerve-wracking call. I knew if they showed up while we were gone, the attendees would have to open the door, since they were playing music so loudly. The police would know they were home. I kept Bree occupied as long as I could before she got a frantic call from one of her lovely friends. The cops were there, with no one in their right mind. The cops ended up opening the door to 8 stoned people. Bree immediately forced us to leave and go back home, and minutes after arriving, 3 of her friends were pulled away in handcuffs. Apparently, they had warrants. I was always listening to them while they partied. I'm surprised only 3 were taken. Sending everyone home, I slept like a baby. No one came over after that, since the house was officially a hotspot for cops, and it wasn't long until my friend wanted to move out. I ended up meeting a nice guy who was still looking for a place in college, and he eventually signed onto the lease to replace Bree. Looking back, this was honestly incredibly stupid, seeing as I could have been charged as well if they had searched the house, since I was on the lease. But seeing her friends, which I had been slowly growing a festering hate towards, get dragged away in handcuffs was incredibly satisfying. They did end up getting released a few days later after making some deal, so their lives weren't totally ruined. Haven't talked to Bree since though. Wow. How can a friend be so disrespectful like that though? After you told them a couple of times and they still keep doing it. I mean, come on now. Thank you very much for sharing that story. Now we have a story from Smurf Hunter 99. They took our parking spot. Hey all, a very angry commenter on my r/nuclear revenge told me my story belonged here and not on NR. Someone replied and said it should be on both, so I'm going to go ahead and post it here. I'll be rewriting it as I wrote the initial post to try and take my mind off of a rather shitty situation that occurred earlier today, and I can probably flesh it out a bit more now that my mind is, mostly, clearer. A few years ago I was going through a harder point in my life. I was living with my brother and my mum, and that was it. My brother, albeit a bit younger, could barely keep his grades up or clean his room, let alone help out with the house. So most choice and responsibilities ended up falling upon my mother and I to work out. And at the time of the story, we ended up agreeing that the current city we lived in was too expensive, her side, and shitty because I didn't like my peers in the school district, my side. And in less than 10 minutes, we had agreed to move nearly half an hour away and never looked back, and it was perfect. Well, it was perfect for about a week, if that. Because the moment we moved in, our douchebag of a neighbour existed. Enter Roger, who made the mistake of taking my mum's parking spot. This was an issue, because if we didn't have our parking spot, we had to park 5 minutes of walking away from the house, which was unpleasant for us, so we decided to politely ask for our spot back. My mum said, "Hi, is this your car?" My mum asked, as she saw Roger walk back to his car. Roger said, "Yeah, and it's my spot too. It's always been that way." "Well, you see, the spots are numbered. This is clearly our..." "Fuck you!" Easy, Roger. And with that, Roger had driven away and set the tone for the entire lease between us. My mum and I agreed we'd try to do what we could to get the neighbour to reconcile his ways and keep notes of anything. Well, noteworthy, but otherwise, not much could be done. The landlords did fuck all to help us, so we were out of that spot. About a month in, I left school about half an hour early and found a free parking spot when I drove there with a friend, and decided this would be the day that we gave him a taste of his own medicine. Turns out, he wasn't very rational either. This led to him blocking my friend in, so he could threaten to assault him until my friend insisted on leaving. I told my mum about this, and she agreed this was the last straw. We're taking this guy down, so she told me to wait and do nothing for a day, so she could get in touch with her friend, who happened to be a sheriff for our local county. Now, I do want to defend myself a bit here. Nah, just kidding. We're totally fucking snitches. Especially when it comes to people like this. Anything that comes their way, they deserve. So we told this guy everything small that happened since the month we moved in. They were constantly loud, we heard yelling from Roger all the time, at one point they broke some furniture outside, and my mum could smell shit through the walls. This turned out to be drugs. The sheriff seemed intrigued. So the sheriff said, "Now, Mum, how much do you hate this guy? I just want my parking spot." "Well, here's the thing, we can't do anything about your parking spot. That's a civil dispute, and not our territory. But," my mum said, "But? You mentioned you smell stuff through the walls, right? Well, we've been arresting an awful lot of people driving under the influences, and it's really close to this complex. If we got him for that, he could have no car to park in your spot behind bars." And so our plan was born. We wrote down everything we smelled. We wrote down the plates of every car that was in our and his spot. We even set a camera up to automatically take pictures of cars and log when they left and pulled in. A motion camera I set up on a high window with a Raspberry Pi, and basically every noise we heard. And when the time came and the sheriff needed evidence, we forwarded it all onto the police officer. Fast forward through months of this, half of our apartment is packed up. I've resigned to always walking home, and not even bothering to have my mum drive me most days, and our neighbour is still being obnoxious as hell. I then saw a truly beautiful sight. The apartment right next to us, swarmed by 6 law enforcement cars, 2 of which were for CPS, and 4 of which were, well, armed fucking cops. Turns out, almost every single plate we noted down and sent to the friend had been arrested for some sort of drug possession. He wasn't just buying drugs, he was selling drugs. Basically every kind of them. We know he had some form of cocaine, meth and weed in his house, and there was probably more that we weren't told of. In that CPS car, turns out he had shared custody of 3 kids. He definitely won't be seeing those kids again. The sheriff told us. He also told us later that Roger got years behind bars, though I'm not sure how many. Probably something over 10. The funny part is that nobody except the sheriff knew my mum was behind this. She said she wanted to remain anonymous, and even turned him down on taking us to dinner. When he asked her why, she replied, "Well, it was a bit late, but you got us that parking spot back, didn't you?" I love the fact that this whole story, the drugs, everything, the arsehole, and your mum's just like, "I just want the parking spot." Thank you so much for sharing that story. It seems like you've done some good work there. You got rid of a bad apple. Now we have a story from Gamers Eat Bacon. I planted over 5,000 dandelion weeds in my neighbour's garden. Here's some backstory. I have a 4-year-old cocker spaniel named Charlie, and he likes to poop. I let him out in my front garden every morning for his toilet routine. We don't have a boundary fence on where my garden and my neighbour's garden starts, besides a row of bushes. Saying this, Charlie hasn't ever crossed/pooped past these bushes. Now every week, I collect up said poop before it gets into a disturbing amount. I've been doing this for the past 4 years to keep my front garden looking good and not smelly. One day I came home from work to find that my neighbours weren't happy that there was dog poop in my front garden. I instantly went to collect up what was there. There wasn't much, and it was nowhere near the boundary of where our gardens met. Fast forward a week, my neighbour again complained about the dog poop being in my garden, however this time threatened to hurt my dog if he continued to poop in my garden. This time, I wasn't so nice about it, and stated that it's my garden and my dog can do as he pleases. Now I know dog poop can be annoying, but when it's not in your garden and there's no smell due to decent airflow and open front garden, is it really justified to threaten the man's dog over some poop? Anyway, after months of this going, with petty things and shade being thrown at me every day about having a dog, I decided to declare war on my neighbours. Now I knew these people pretty well. They just moved in and we let them use our Wi-Fi for a couple of months, until they got theirs sorted. I picked up a few things about them, and one of them was how OCD they were. They cut back their garden every week and painted the entire bottom layer of their house to match their fence. This was all the fuel I needed to exact my revenge. I knew they liked things to match, so I painted my fence gate bright pink instead of matching it with my fence. This was my first small victory. They hated it so much they begged me to correct the colour. So I did. I figured if peace was an option, it was worthwhile. Then began the hate again. I had to come up with something so evil and yet genius that couldn't be traced back to me. This is when I planted over 5,000 dandelion seeds in their front and back garden. I figured I was in this for the long game. I did this under the cover of night and made sure to plant them in places not easily mowed. Fast forward 3 months and the garden is covered in weeds. They grew through all the slabbing and were patched all over the garden. It took them over 3 days to clear the weeds and around £100 worth of weed killer. Long story short, arsehole neighbours threatened to hurt my doggo. I plant 5,000 weeds in their garden. Edit, I see a lot of people commenting on leaving dog poop in my garden. Firstly, he's a cocker spaniel. He isn't taking colossal shits. It's also a fairly big garden. There aren't huge piles everywhere. Dog tends to spread it out to mark territory. You'd physically have to search for it to find it. Regardless of not picking it up instantly, unlike some, when my dog needs to go, he's going to go. Usually has a final poop before bedtime around 11 PM. And here's a picture of said doggo. What's your thoughts on that one, guys? Would you be offended by the guy leaving some turds out for a couple of days? As he said, it's in an open area, you're not smelling it. You might see a little turd, but I mean, it's a turd. Now we have a story from Katrina Kiev. 2 fitness bullies in my spin class throw shade at me in the studio and on social media. I get both banned from the studio. One gets fired from a job, the other's illegal hustle gets wrecked. On New Year's Day of 2018, I resolved to get into shape. I was never overweight, but growing up in Russia and spending my very early adulthood there, I smoked like a chimney and my cardio was garbage. Going into college in America didn't help matters because I started drinking to go along with my smoking. I decided to start going to spin class. I work at a marketing firm and chose a particular spin class because I received a free year-long membership as a holiday office party present that year. It was a generous gift because it was a trendy, pricey boutique spin studio. I've ridden bikes my whole life, so I thought, how hard can it be to ride a bike that doesn't go anywhere? But my first day in was a rude awakening. It was clear the class I was attending, an early morning class for people to attend before work, was an advanced one where a majority seemed to already be part of the culture and very fit. It was obvious I couldn't keep up. The instructor was really nice and told me that since I'm new, it's a good idea for me to ride up front so that I can watch him and copy what he does more accurately, or alternatively, he can easily see what I'm doing and offer alternatives if I'm not doing things right. I thought, what a great guy and what a great class. There were two other students in the class though, who gradually made my morning spin classes suck. Valerie, who was obviously very fit, she looked like a model and obviously worked hard to look as good as she did. And Boris, who was a male equivalent. They were both about my age, maybe a few years older, and it was clear they were far more fit than me. They were obviously very invested in that particular gym's culture, in that they were always decked out in store brand athletic wear. I'm not gonna lie, they looked good wearing it. They weren't a couple, but it was obvious that Boris had a thing for Valerie, and Valerie was aware of it and not reciprocating. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't my business. That thing about both of them being more fit than me, they didn't let me forget it. For some reason, they seemed to take offense to the fact that I was riding up front. I can see why. The front two rows were filled with the very strongest, fittest people, the let's take a selfie sort of gym people, except these ones seemed actually fit. At the same time, all the other super hot girls and guys, especially the guys, were very nice to me and didn't seem to care that I rode up front, whereas Valerie and Boris would always shoot these sideward, disgusted glances at me or smirk. I'm not a confrontational person, so I wouldn't do the thing most would do in this situation, such as say, the fuck is your problem, bitch? I always got to class super early to dress up and adjust my bike. The gym has a policy, first come, first serve when it comes to choosing one of the 30 bikes in the studio. I noticed a lot of other people show up early who were also clearly less fit than the stars that occupied the first couple of rows, but they seemed to self-segregate into the very back. I was still new as my first couple of weeks, so I sat up front because I was still finding my rhythm. I'd sit right up front where the instructor told me, so that I could watch him and he could watch me. Every time he would come in, he'd greet me enthusiastically and praise me for my commitment to fitness. It was a little wonder his class was so popular. Everyone held him in high regard. Sometimes in class, he would shout encouragement to the class as a whole, but also give personal shouts to certain students. Despite the darkness of the room, when the instructor said, "Great job there, OP, you're killing it," I noticed both Boris and Valerie give each other a look and shake their heads laughing. I never knew for sure why Valerie hated me, but I think it might be because we were both Russian and no one else who went to the early class seemed to be, and she wanted to be the only East Euro girl. Who knows? As for Boris, he followed Valerie because he wanted to get in her pants. Boris and Valerie usually showed up right when the class was starting, and the whole place was packed, and yet they were so entitled that they were always the two bikes up front, right next to each other, reserved for them. Despite the crowd at 5:30 AM, there were still a couple of empty bikes in the middle or back, but that wasn't good enough for them. I'd be right in the front row too. I got there early, and it was my right to sit wherever I please. And yet, despite them showing up at the last second, they shake their heads at me like I'm the one who's got a lot of nerve. Well, this goes on day after day for a whole month, and despite the fact that I'm no longer new, I'm starting to get more fit and don't really need the instructor so much just to survive the hour on a bike, I still sit right up front. I thought maybe that particular bike I was selecting had some sort of significance to Valerie or Boris, and that's why they copped such an attitude all the time. I always rode on the same bike. By this time, I was also a bit chummy with a lot of the other women, I knew their names and would hug in the morning. I thought I should make peace with Valerie, if not Boris, who always sort of gave me a "I hate you because Valerie hates you, but if there was no Valerie, I'd totally go out with you" vibe. So, when I saw Valerie that morning, as usual she showed up right when the class started and sat next to me, I politely asked, "Was this your bike before and you were used to it? We can trade if you like." She rolls her eyes at me and gives Boris a look, and like a donkey, he smirks too. She actually says, "You should sit in the back, we're motivating people up here and you're hogging the mirror space." There was a whole wall mirror in the front of the classroom. I'm thinking, what is this? High school? What the actual fuck? You've got to be 30 fucking years old and you're acting like this. And seriously, you may be fitter than me, but I'm just as tall and don't weigh any more than you do or take up any more space in the mirror. And it wouldn't even matter if I did. We're adults, or at least I am. Sigh. That's what I wish I had said. Instead, I just put my head down and went on with my class. Eventually I got so familiar with one of the other students because the same regulars would come to class every day that we all became social media friends. I even became social media friends with the instructor. I don't post much on social media. I don't show where I work or every single thing I do or my random brain farts. I just post the occasional photo. On one of these rare photos, where I was admittedly begging for approval because I was proud of developing abs, the spin instructor himself commented how proud he was of me. A lot of people from the spin class also said nice things. I was friends with neither Valerie nor Boris on social media, but they both liked the instructor's comment on my photo, and my guess is because they both liked to kiss his ass. They certainly never showed me any kindness in class, unlike everyone else who was supportive of me. I clicked on their names and my suspicions were confirmed. Both of them practically lived on social media and took endless selfies, showed off their bodies, humble bragged non-stop. They also made no secret of who their employers were. Valerie tried to claim she was a model, even though it was clear her only real job was being a sales rep for a beauty brand. Valerie was only a model in the take a picture of yourself using an iPhone in front of the bathroom mirror sense. So Valerie, I guess that makes me a model too. These two were such idiots that they'd post really dumb things on each other's walls. It didn't seem like they really had lives other than to talk trash against people. I saw they had one exchange where they were clearly talking about me. How do I know? Because they actually said my name and said I was ugly and a wannabe and skinny fat and all this other horrible shit. They also talked a lot about people in the class and said horrible things and actually named names. It doesn't seem like they were friendly with other people, even the very fit people who were in some cases were even fitter. In terms of the class, they were social media friends with the instructor and some other teachers on the schedule, and with each other, but not with anyone else. Anyway, I actually confirmed my suspicion that Boris was low-key thirsty. After the spin instructor made a nice comment on my picture and Boris saw that I existed online, he sent me a private message asking me if we'd go to coffee sometime. I ignored the message, which is just as well, because the next time in class he ignored me and just followed Valerie's normal smirk and psh routine. I don't like to start drama, but I don't like being bullied and trashed either. I screen captured and saved a lot of both Valerie's and Boris's comments, where they trashed at least a dozen people in our class, and then made a dummy Facebook account. I fired off every screen capture to the owner of the studio, not just the manager of that particular branch, but the owner of the whole company, in addition to the branch manager. I let them know that these two cretins were trashing many people in the morning class and creating a hostile, unwelcome environment. I was also nice enough to send the appropriate screen captures where Boris and Valerie named specific people in the class to those actual people, if their accounts weren't set to where only friends could message them or post on their feeds. In less than a week, Boris and Valerie were gone, both of their memberships revoked and were banned from every one of the brand studios. Several other people that Valerie insulted were sufficiently offended and they sent emails to Valerie's employer. Valerie, as previously mentioned, made no secret of where she worked, about what a hateful, body-shaming person she was, and how such a person should not be in any kind of brand ambassador. From what the other girls in the studio tell me, Valerie got fired from her job. Don't worry, Valerie, you still have your modelling career of taking selfies in your panties next to your toilet in your apartment. I had the pleasure of seeing some of the less patient, ripped buff dudes in class who didn't find it amusing that Boris was telling Valerie on Facebook that he could kick anyone's ass in class, openly offered to let him test his theory anytime, anywhere. Unfortunately, Boris was too occupied up front getting his membership cancelled and being refunded and being told to never come back please to make such arrangements. See ya, arsehole. Boris had a wannabe unlicensed personal training business that he liked to talk about on Facebook, and several of the men in class who had legit training certificates shut him down with quickness. There's always Starbucks. Maybe I'll go for a coffee sometime and buy it from you, barista. As for me, I still show up early, but I find my comfort zone in row 2 now, or even further back. There's always new students, and I like for them to sit right up front so that they feel welcome. That's what it means to be in fitness community. Everyone's welcome. This isn't some kind of high school cafeteria, you can't sit with us bullshit. I love the class so much I kept going into 2019 as a paying member, even after my free year was finished. In 18 months I've posted 3 pictures related to the spin class. That 4-pack is coming in nicely, lol. From certain lighting and angles anyway. Goals. Haven't smoked in ages, still drink like a fish. It's the Russian in me, I think. I honestly hope Boris and Valerie grew up. I low-key hope they marry because they deserve each other. Though I hope they don't breed because that much narcissism from two parents would result in a kid with a lot of issues. Wow! What a story, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That's a really good story, actually, really well written as well. Nice read. Anyway guys, I'd love to know if you had any similar stories to these in the comments below. If you did, don't forget to throw that like, that subscribe button, and all that good stuff. Much love guys. Bye bye.